Hello and welcome to another episode of Design with Pam. Today we will be looking at variables, and by the end of this tutorial you will learn how to use variables right in Figma. Alright, so let's start by understanding what variables are. Right, in simple terms we can say that variables are stored values that represent design attributes or saved states. They can be string, numbers, colors, or boolean value types. This is somewhat different from styles, right? I know that styles, even though styles also allow you store reusable values, they have their differences. With variables, you can switch your designs from light mode to dark mode, change all strings of a model to a different language. Style can also not reference another style, but a variable can reference another variable or even a style. So with variables, we can now also create design tokens. Anyway, maybe when we start creating them, you get to really understand how to use variables and how they are somewhat different from styles. Now, without much, let's go right into it. I have created this file. I'm going to leave the link, this design file. I'm going to leave the link in the description below so you can use it and follow along with this tutorial. So this is a page, like a password creation page that I've created, right? And this is the colors that I used while creating this one. I get a lot of questions, how do they create this different color scale? So for me now, this color 500 is like my main color, my primary color that I would like to use, right? Like the brown color. So what I did was simply go to ChatGPT. There are other websites or other tools you could use for color scaling and stuff, but I tried to use ChatGPT for this one, right? I just pasted this color code and asked ChatGPT to create different color scaling from bright to something darker, and it gave me some options and I arrived and I chose all of those ones. So I already have like a mental picture of what I wanted to create, so I made sure I created a lighter version of this blue because this was going to serve as my input field, right? And I also created a darker shade of this one because this is the color I'll be using for my headers, right? And I also went ahead to create the grayscale because I'll be using one of these colors here for my paragraph text. This one, I'll be using this one of those colors here for my paragraph text. Then I also created white for my page background, and if maybe I don't want to use pure white as a page background, I created this one. Then I also created some colors for responses like error message, success message, and warning messages. All right, so I want to use for this design, actually I use like a 4-point grid system. So this is my spacing system. I started with a spacing of 0 in case I don't want to leave spacing. Then I gave 1, 2 in case I just want to leave a very little space that is far below 4. Then every other thing is a multiple of 4. So yes, this is what I did. So let's go right into understanding how to create variables right here in Figma. So the first thing I'm going to do is come to this local variables here, and I'm going to click on open variables. Right, so once you click on it, this is what you're going to get, right? So we're going to come to create variables, and you're going to see these 4 options here. It means that we can create color variables, number variables, string variables, and boolean variables. So this color variables is used for color fields, right? Where you can place colors. You could place colors on text, you could place colors on page background, cards. Then we have the number variables for dimensions such as like auto layout, your corner radius, places where we use numbers generally like spacing, right? We can create variables for that. Then we have also the string variable. For string variable is for text layers and variant properties. Then we also have the boolean variable, which is this 4th one. This is defined by a true or false toggle to toggle things like on and off. So I'm going to attach a link to a video where I discussed how to create component properties, and I touched on boolean properties so you understand it in depth, right? Let's go ahead and create a color variable. Before we go ahead to create this color variables, I want us to understand what primitives are and tokens are, because we're going to be saying the word a lot and we're going to be using it here, so I need us to understand. So I'm going to this is like a brief explanation of what primitives and tokens are. So primitives are like the basic building blocks of design system within a system. So they include fundamental properties such as colors, typography, spacing, and effects. So this primitive serves as the foundation upon which the design system is built. So for example, a color primitive might include primary color, secondary, and accent color, while typography primitive might consist of font style, sizes, weight, and all of that. So tokens are the specific values assigned to this primitive. So when we're creating color variables, for instance, we're first of all going to create our primitives, right? Which is like the fundamental element or properties, like our foundation upon which we build our design systems, right? Then when we create these primitives, we then go ahead to create tokens. So these tokens are then going to reference the primitive values or variables that we have created, be it colors or spacing and all of that, right? So remember, tokens are the specific values assigned to these primitives, while primitives are serves as a foundation upon which the design system is built. So maybe if you don't understand it again, I've simplified it here. Imagine you have a box of different colors and each color has a name like red, blue, or yellow. So these colors are like your basic building blocks, right? These are your primitives. Now let's say you have a special sticker for each color that tells you exactly what shade of color it is. So if you have a sticker for red, it might say something like bright red or dark red. These stickers are like your tokens. They help you know exactly which shade of red you are talking about. So in simple terms, primitives are the basic colors you have, while tokens are the stickers that tell you exactly which shade of color you are using. So let's go back to creating our variables here. So we're here creating variables. So remember, when you click on create variable, you get this options, right? So we're going to go over it one after the other. We're going to create a color variable down to a boolean variable, so and see how we can apply it to this our design. That is why we have them here. So I'm going to click on create variables and I'm going to start by creating the color variables here. Before we create the variable, right, let's go and rename this collection. Let's call it our primitives. All right, so let's create. So this is my color variable. So I'm going to add all those colors here that I've created that I want to be using in my design. I'm going to add them to my primitive variables, right? So this one, I've already given all those colors like a number just to identify them when I want to make reference to them. So this one, I'm going to say 50 and I'm going to click on this field here. This comes up and I'm going to take my color picker and I'm going to pick this color. So I'm going to duplicate this by right clicking and say duplicate. Let me duplicate it severally. All right, so for the second one, I'm going to say 100 because the next value there is 100. Then I'm going to click into this, take my color picker and then select the other color. And I'm going to do this for this one. This other value is 200. Select this one, take my color picker and take this color. Do the same thing for this one. Take my color picker and then choose the 300. So I'm going to fast forward this section now and I'm going to use the same way and then create all for all of these values here. So I've gone ahead to create all color variables now, but I'm going to group them. So the ones for blue will stay in a group, while the ones for gray, white, and the ones I categorize for responses will be in their separate group. So for the ones with blue, they stopped at 950. So I'm going to select this one and then scroll up to 50. Before I click on this one 50, I'm going to hold on to shift and then click on it. Then I'm going to right click and select new group selection. So what I want to do is I want everything that has to do with colors to be in a folder, in a group, but in that group I want to have like subgroups that says blue, another one that says gray, another one that says responses and the likes. So I'm going to double click into this and name it color. Then I'm going to type / and I'm going to say blue. So once you do that, you can see that I have created a group here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, select all variables now, and I'm going to locate my colors that has to do with gray. So the ones with gray start with G, right? So I'm going to select, this is where it ends. Select this one, scroll up, and then make sure I hold on to shift before I select the last one. Then I'm going to right click and say new group selection. I'm going to double click and name it again color / gray. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing for my white. So this one's I'm selecting the both of them, right group, and then say color / white. Then go back, select variables, and come and select all of this, right click, say let's name this color / responses. All right, so right now we have created our color variables. So the next thing we can do again is to create our number variables that can define our spacing system, our corner radius, and anything that has to do with numbers. So let's continue. Now let's go ahead and create the number variables, right? I'm going to click on, make sure that you're selecting all variables here, you're not selecting any of those variables under colors. So let's go back, make sure we select all variables and click on create variables and then select number. So this will define like our spacing system and maybe numbers in our auto layout and maybe our corner radius, right? So for this one, let's give it a name. Let's say 0. This will be not, let's give it a name. No, let's say it's 0, which we leave the value at 0, right? Which maybe we don't want a spacing. The value is 0. So I'm going to right click and duplicate this. Let's just leave it at 02. So remember that I told you that I'm using like a 4-point grid system, right? So most of my numbers that I'll be choosing here for my spacings and maybe my corner radius and the likes are going to be like numbers divisible by 4. But however, I'm also going to make space. I'm making space for situations where I don't want to give spacing at all for any element. But for the second one, let's give it the value of 4. So it means that if I select this one in my design, if I select this variable in my design, it means that the spacing or anything that has to do with number, if I select 2, it's going to be a 4, the value of 4, spacing of 4, corner radius of 4, anything that has to do with numbers. So I'm going to duplicate this. Let's just duplicate it multiple times for the number of values that we want to add. So remember, I'm leaving this one at 3. So for this one, I'm going to say 8. This other one, I'm going to say, let's say it's 12. This one, let's say it's 16. So for this one, let's say 20, 24, 32. I'm going to continue duplicating it. So we have 32 here. So we have 0, 2, 3, 4. Let's name this a 4. And name this a 5. Let's also name this a 6. This is 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, let's say 13. So we have 20, 24 for the value is 32. Let's give this one a 38. Let's also name this other one a 40. So this one will be 40. So based on this design file that we're using, this design, so let's not go to granular. Let's give this one a 56. Let's give this one a 58, which is fine. 58, which is fine. Now we have created number variables. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of it. Select this first one, hold on to shift, select the second one, right click, and then let's call it spacing. Now we have two collections here for colors and for spacing. Now we have created these two variables for colors and for spacing. Before we go ahead and create other variables for string and for boolean, the boolean variables, let me actually apply these variables to our design so that you understand before we move ahead. But one thing you should know that for this variable, it's not like we're going to go straight to our design and let's say apply it from all of the sections here. You know how we do with styles, right? Once you've created a style, maybe you can come to your styles and library here and then find a color and apply to it. Now, after creating variables, the next thing that we're meant to do is to create our design token, which is tokenization. This is where tokenization comes in. So we need to tokenize our variables. The new set of collection we're going to create will then reference this primitive variables that we have created. So what I'm going to do is to click on this icon you're seeing here, and I'm going to come on create collection. Then I'm going to name this tokens. So for this one, I'm going to create color for colors here. I'm going to create it. So remember what we said tokens are. Remember I told you that tokens are the stickers that tell you exactly which shade of each color you're using. Now for this one, I am going to create colors that are going to match these designs. So let's say we will need a primary background color, right? So yes, our primary background color is white, but we're not going to leave it at white. We're going to reference the primitives, the variables we created on the primitives, which is where creating an alias comes in. So on this color section here, I'm going to right click and select create alias, right? Then I am going to you're going to see these options here, and I'm going to come and choose 50. Remember that the colors under our color blue container here, right? Sorry, we're not using 50 under our white container here. Remember, under our white container here, we have white family, which is 50. So once I right click and select create alias, I'm going to go to this column, color white, and I'm going to choose this. So the next thing we need now is to define the colors that we're going to be using for our primary button, the text header, the paragraph text, and all of this input fields, right? So I'm going to also click on this and select create color. So let's say I'm going to say text headers. So for this text header, I'm going to right click and choose a color. So I am actually choosing this color. I'm going to be going with this color here under my gray category, which is gray 500. So I'm going to find gray 500. So I named it G500 here, right, which is fine. I'm going to create another color here. So let's say paragraph 1, right? So for this paragraph 1, I'm going with this color. I'm actually going with this color, which is under the gray family for gray 300. So I'm going to right click, select create alias, and find gray 300. So what next do we need? We need our input field, this input field here. So I'm going to create another color here, and I'm going to title it input field, right click, create an alias. So for this input field, we're actually using this for this color under the blue container, which is 50. Right click, find my blue container, and choose 50. So what else do we need? We need to create colors for, let's just say, black colors that will represent this arrow button here, this eye icon here, the arrow icon, and this eye icon here. So let's also create a color. Let's start with the primary button. Let's right click and create an alias and choose, I think, the primary button with B500. So let's create another one and let's say black. Let's call it black. Right click, and we're going to be using the blue 950. Let's say, no, let's not make it too dark, so let's say blue 900. Create a layer. This is blue color blue 900 is that means we didn't even give it the right figure here. So what we're going to do, I've selected this as color blue 900. I'm going to click this drop down, go to primitive and find my blue. Under my blue, go to blue here. Let's find blue 900. That means we didn't give it the right input field. So I'm going to select the color picker and make sure I choose blue 900. So once I do that, right, if you go back to your tokens now, you're going to see that this has been adjusted accordingly. All right. Now, what else do we need input field for? So we have this as paragraph 1. This other section should also have like paragraph 2. So let's create a color. Let's name it a paragraph 2. So for this one, we need something a bit dark, but not really dark. So I'm going to give it, let's go to the gray family. Let's give it a gray 500. Gray 500. All right. So we are heading somewhere. So this other one, we have this red one for let's name it error. So I'm going to create an alias and go to this one. This is color responses R550, represents that. For green, let's do the same thing. Let's title it success. Right click, create an alias and save and select this one. Now that we have created our color tokens now, so let's see how we can apply it in our design. To apply the color variables that we have created, what I'm going to do is to bring back this UI. I'm going to select this card here, this header here, and I'm going to come to this field section, click this, and then go down to tokens. Remember that we're not adding the variables from the primitive section, right? We're going to be adding it from the token section here. We're going to be adding it from token section. So this one has been created for text header. This other one, let's give it for paragraph. There's one that we name paragraph 1. We're using this for paragraph. This other one, we are going to use paragraph 2 for this one. Then this one, let's also use the ones we for black. This other one, let's also use black. So for this color, let's use black here. I'm holding on to shift and selecting all those elements, and I am going to change the colors to black. So for this particular one, this one, I am going to change it. Remember we said we're going to be using a color from the blue family. So let's use blue. This is primitive, sorry. We have to go under tokens. So this is tokens. This is input field. We have this. We're also going to do that. Select this and go to tokens. Find input field, which is fine. This other one, the card itself should be white. So I'm going to go to tokens and I'm going to say background white. Now I'm going to select the whole card itself. And I'm also going to say go and attach it to this variable which we created under tokens background white. All right, we're good. So let's also do this for this particular one. I'm just going to fast forward this section. Now you have seen how to attach these variables to your design. Remember, we created color variables on the primitive first, then we went ahead to create tokens, and we made reference to the color primitive, the variables that we created under the primitive collections. So now we're going to look at number variables that we created and how we can use them for our spacings and our corner radius. So I'm going to go back. I made sure that I didn't select anything here, and I'm going to click on this local variables here. So on the spacing here, remember we created a collection for a category for spacing, right? We're going to go back to our tokens, right? Then I am going to create click on create variables and create number variables. So I'm going to create number variables from, I'll start for my spacing system, right? Based on the card that we are working with, based on this page, this form here that we are using as for illustration, I'm going to create the spacing system that actually suits what I've already used here. I'm going to title the first one as spacing small, or let's start with the, let's say no spacing, and we're going to right click, create an alias, and for my spacing I'm going to leave this at 0, right? I'm going to do the same. I want to create a spacing, small spacing. For that one, I wanted the spacing to be 16, right? Apologies, I created for colors here. I'm going to delete this now, create for number, then I'll say small spacing. Then I'm going to create right click and select create an alias. So for our 16, remember this one is 0, this one is 4, this is most likely 12, and this is 16. So let's confirm, detach this alias and look, okay, say this one is 12. Let's create another alias. Let's say 5 is 16. Yes, so small spacing is spacing 5 will give us a spacing of 16. So I'm going to go ahead again and create another one. Let's title this one a medium. So for this medium, I want the spacing to be 24. So for my 24, I used, so 8 is my 24, right? So let's create another one. Let's call this one large. So for this one large, I want a spacing of 40. So for 40, I actually used, for 40 I used a 10 thereabouts. Let's confirm. Yes, 10 is good. A 10, I used a 10. So let's also give it, let's find a spacing of extra large. Let's say extra large. So for this spacing, I am going to leave it at 12, which is good. 56, perfect. So now let's also create that of corner radius, the ones for corner radius. So I'm going to click on this, go to numbers, and say for corner radius, I know I made use of 4 small, let's just say corner radius, and I'm going to create an alias. Remember our 4 is 2 here. Create another number variable, and I'm going to say for another corner radius that I might most likely be using, I use 4 for all of that. This one is 100 large corner radius, and I'm going to right click and use this 13. 13 is a 100. So 13 is a 58, but I want it fully rounded, right? Don't worry, I just I clicked on Ctrl Z to go back to the state where it is still attached. We're going to try to make use of a 58 because we didn't add it in our primitive, but however we can go ahead and add it to our primitives here. Let's click on, let me just title number variables, and I'm going to give it a number of 100. Then I can go back to my primitive, my tokens here, right click here on create alias, and I can go under my primitive and select 100, which is fine. Now let's attach it to our design here. So what I'm going to do is for this one, this two, let's right click, select the both of them, create an auto layout. So for this spacing, let's give the spacing a 24. I just click the drop down under this auto layout section here, this place that is the vertical gap between items. I clicked on the drop down and selected apply variables. So I am not going to select from the primitive, remember, I'm going to select from tokens. Now for tokens, we're not using this one, we're looking for small spacing, which is 16, medium, large, extra large, small spacing. So for the medium, which is 24, let's give it a small spacing, which is fine. So we also have a spacing going on here, which is 16. I'm going to attach it to a variable now. So I'm using small spacing. This other one has a spacing of 43. Let's attach a variable. Let's go down to, let's give it a large, which is 40, which is fine. This card 2 also has a spacing system here. Let's attach a spacing here. So we don't have a spacing of 8, which is the most appropriate one to use. So let's go back and go to under our tokens here. Let's create a number variable, and let's just give it the direct 8 that we're looking for. So I'm going to go to under spacing here, and I'm going to choose this one. So just to confirm, this is a spacing of 4. Let's use a spacing of 3. So let's go back and attach 8 for this card. So for this card, I am going to make sure I select the card here, go down here, create apply variable, go to my tokens, and I'll choose the one I chose for 8. I think it's the same thing for here. Let's apply our tokens here, just choose the one for 8. Then for this card here, the spacing is 24. So let's go to apply variables, go on that token. Let's give it a spacing of, we didn't create a 24, we need to create a 24. So we need to add it to our primitive, our token collections here. So let's go back to under our tokens here. For 24, we have 24 here, but this is referencing 20. So let's create an alias. I think 7 here on that primitives is will give us 24. Yes, we're good. So let's go back and attach the spacing that we have here. So let's do this. Let's attach the spacing here. Let's go under tokens, and we're going to choose 24, which is fine. So we also have a spacing here. Let's attach the spacing here. This is 58. Let's go back under our primitive and say we want to add extra large. All right. So remember that we created a number of variables that is supposed to be applicable to just our corner radius, right? So I'm going to go to these local variables here under my tokens. I'm going to find my number variables, but you know what? We can actually make this much more easy for ourselves rather than having it all in one place. Then I can find a way to group all of this. So I'm selecting everything that has to do with colors. And I'm going to right click and say create new group selection. I am going to say this is my colors, right? Then I'm going to go to all variable here. So let's title this properly. I'm going to select all variables and find the variables that has to do with numbers. So this one is my spacing system. For my spacing system, let's deselect the one that has to do with corner radius, right? Then what I did was I just held on to my control or command button and make sure I deselected the one that I titled small corner radius and large corner radius. So I'm going to right click and say group selection. I'm going to come here and just title it spacing, right? So we have spacing going on here, but so that this spacing numbers do not pop up when I want to use it for my corner radius, I'm going to click on this edit variable and I'm going to detach corner radius from it so that it doesn't show. I'm going to do it for all of it, detach corner radius. This is under number scoping. So under this section, you can select where this your variable should be applicable. Do you want it to be applicable to width and height, to gap, anything that has to do with numbers? You know, corner radius has to do with numbers, text content, stroke, layer, opacity, and all of those things have to do with numbers. So I don't want them to pop up for my corner radius because I'm not using them specifically for corner radius. I could use them for gaps. That's the auto layout that we've been applying it to here since, right? But for text content too, we could use it there. However, I don't want it to appear in corner radius, so I'm going to detach them, detach all instances of corner radius on each of them. They are not going to apply, or they are not going to show. Don't worry, I'll show you exactly what we created. So I'm going to go back to all variables now, and I'm going to select my small corner radius and large corner radius, right click, and I'm going to title it corner radius, right? So for this one to only show up only when we have corner radius, I'm going to just select, detach everything and make sure I select corner radius, detach everything here also and make sure I select corner radius. So when we go back to our anywhere that has to do with maybe our spacing system now, so if I click the drop down, go to apply variables, under my token, you can see that small corner radius and large corner radius is not going to pop up now. But let's go to a card or an element that corner radius is applicable to, right? If I click, so if you come to this corner radius section here, if you click on this icon beside it, if we go under our tokens, you can see that we can only see small corner radius and large corner radius. So I'm going to apply it to everything that I have here. So what I'm doing now is to attach the variables to this. Let's go on the small corner radius. This one, let's also give it a small corner radius. So this one has 100 corner radius. That's why we went back to create that. All right, so these are the things that need auto a corner radius. Let's also attach this to it. Now the beauty of this now is, let's say during your project and you want to change the corner radius for all of your cards, and you have attached them to a variable, and you maybe because you've been using 4 across all the designs and you decided to use 8, maybe because of further instructions, right? You can just go to your local variable. So if you have any other numbers that you have created in your primitive, you can then maybe change the numbers or the corner radius here, attach the value here to a new primitive value. But if you don't have that number in your primitive, you just go back to your primitive, right? Add it, come back to your tokens and add it. Or if maybe that's the only number that you have, you can just go to your primitive and change the number itself. Maybe you want to change 4 now to an 8 or a 16. You automatically, or a 3, right, or a 2. Just change it here and all changes will be applicable to it. Now let me show you what I mean. As you can see now, this is the corner radius that we're using, which is 4, and we attach it to a number variable here. Now you remember that we referenced this number, this value 4 in our tokens, which we attached to our designs. Now this is the parent. For instance, let's use the word, this is the parent, this is the foundation. Now if I change the foundation, it's going to change across all the designs. So let's say I change this from 4 to a 16. Watch my design, everything has changed all at once. So this is part of the importance of using variables. Makes your work consistent and makes it easy for you to implement changes and have like a defined set of rules, guidelines that you're working with. All right, so that's that for number variables and our color variables. I hope you understand. Now let me go ahead and show you how to create a string variable. To create this string variable is more like localizing elements. So if you have it in English language, you can easily change to another language by just clicking a button. That's the essence of the string variable. So I'm just going to go to click on local variables, just the way we have created. And then I'm going to click on this option and create collection. So let's just title this collection language. right? Then I'm going to click on create collection and select the string variable. Then I'm going to do this illustration with just changing the title of this our design here. So I'm just going to name this title, and I'm going to paste the text that we have, which is create a password. Then I'm going to come and click on this plus sign. And one thing I need you to understand is this feature is only available if you're using the paid version. It's not available for the free version, but you can just follow along and know that this is actually available or achievable. Once I click on the plus sign, I get to have the second mode. Let's just say I want it to be French. So let's just say I'm going to title this first one English. So for the second one, I have the text already somewhere, so I'm just going to paste it. So for the French one, I've already translated it with Google Translate, and I'm just going to paste it. Because I've created a test string here, I can then go and apply it to my design. Now, to attach it to our design here, I'm going to select just this title that I translated. Then I'm going to head over to this text section. I'm going to click on this icon here, which is apply variable. Then I'm going to go to my collection for language change, and I'm going to attach it to this text header. I'm going to attach it to this variable. So once we do that, I'm going to click outside the box, and I'm going to select the main frame itself, and I'm going to go to under layers here. Once you click on it, you can see this collection here, which is language change, and I'm going to change it to French. So once I change it to French, you can see this has been translated. So imagine you translated every single thing here. Once you change the layer from this layer section, if you change this it to French or any other collection you created, everything is going to adjust accordingly. So one last thing that I would like to quickly show us about these variables is that you can switch between light mode and dark mode. So same way we created this collection for our test string, under variables like this, you can go ahead to create, this is our language change. I created like a new mode here, which is by hitting the plus sign. Same way you can do that for dark mode and light mode. So I created all of this, the colors and all of that. Then once I created another mode, I gave it specific color. So in case, if anywhere you see black, let's use white, just like that. So once you've created that collection in the same light, just go to this layer section here, click on the change layers mode. We have a collection for language and collection for dark and light. Then I can go ahead and change this to dark mode. However, you have to be sure that wherever you have white, the next mode should be an appropriate color, right? That is what you're going to apply to your design. So this is just like a test run. Find appropriate color that suits your design when you're changing to a light or a dark mode. I hope this section was I hope you enjoyed this tutorial section. If you did, please hit the subscribe button, like button, and share button to encourage us to continue. All right, see you next tutorial.